Hi, everyone. Today, I bring to you a unique dialogue. We are going to talk to Dadi Pudumjee, India's foremost puppeteer. Puppetry is a very unique medium of communication. Somebody once said, puppets can communicate what humans find it hard to communicate. What a profound statement that is. Puppets do not have an ego. Puppets are hard to misunderstand. People don't have biases against puppets. That makes it easy to deliver a message gently, joyfully, and gracefully. India has a rich tradition of puppetry. Traditional puppeteers travel from village to village in a makeshift tent, enthralling people with stories from mythology and folk tales. They help expand imagination. They elevate people from the miseries of the present to the possibilities of the future. Today, the world is caught up in conflict and hatred. We need as many tools as possible to resolve conflict, to have a dialogue, and look at future with positivity. Fortunately, people like Dadi are delivering the message of peace, the message of joy through puppetry, with mindfulness, with grace, with empathy. They understand that we need space and time to reflect over the messages at peace, to expand our imagination, and to have a positive view of the future. Dadi is doing exactly that. He's traveling around the world. He's traveled around the country, delivering socially relevant messages through a new form of puppetry that combines tradition and contemporary style. So let's look at some of his creations and then have a dialogue with Dadi Pudumjee. Hi, Dadi. Thank you for joining for this dialogue. And I want to give you a quick background of why I reached out to you. Um, as I said earlier in our conversation, that I have a background in theater and mime. And over the years, I have also developed a keen interest in understanding the structure and dynamics and effectiveness of comic strips. And there's a book called Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. And he talks about how between the frames, comics evoke imagination in the reader. And it's not what is in the frames, but what people visualize between the frames. It's called gutters of the comic strip, is where the real experience of comic manifests itself.
Right.
So between mime, puppetry, and comics, what I have found interesting is, and that has actually fed my philosophy of design, is that it's not what we create that's important, but how people take it and build their own imagination and act on it. That is the true essence of creativity and inspiring the future.
Right.
And all these mediums, be it puppetry or mime or comic strips, evoke people's imagination in a way that they see it on their own terms, in their own context, possibilities for the future. And so the reason I reached out to you is you've done this for a lifetime, puppetry. I'm sure you started with puppetry as a craft, but over a period of time, with engagements with both your audience and your puppets, you have evolved. You have evolved your understanding of the relationship between puppet, yourself, and your audience. And I want to talk about that because I do believe, and this is actually a clue came from Ashok Chatterjee's question to you in the last, Siddharth's dialogue with you, is he asked, like, in current difficult times, which of your productions do you find are relevant? And you said Rumi and Gandhi. And when I was listening to that, I realized, you know what, this is so profound. I said, what we really need is a message of positivity and nonviolence and delivered through play and fun. And I think we need to like encourage people to expand their imagination in a way that has less conflict and more dialogue and more peace than hatred. So this is like my own evolution of my practice of design and design research. And today I call myself an ethnographer of imagination. So I want to check with you how your thoughts have evolved. So my first question to you is, think of your first day at Darpana with Meherben, and when you were exposed to all these puppets and puppetry, what were your feelings that day? Like what did you imagine your future could be with puppets?
You see, I come from a sort of so-called middle-class family, Parsi family in from Pune now.
Mhm.
And it was there that the seed of puppetry came through, but to Pelham Puppets, it was a company in UK which made string puppet toys, and it was brought by a cousin or relative. And one thing led to another, and through a famous bookstore, Manny's, which had theater craft books. Now you don't see them so much, and it evolved. It evolved, as you said, as a craft right through school in Pune and college. Before I went to Ahmedabad, I did my BA, political science, history, and economics. I don't remember much of it now. So it was social work, collecting funds for women's council, school, whatever. And when NID happened, and thankfully it happened because one left home from this sheltered, thing and come to another city for the first time, 1971. And I remember NID. And at one point of time, I think it was my mother who knew about Meherben, and we went to meet her at her place, at her house, not at Darpana first. I remember going up that Vakil compound, and then everything was exciting. I mean, whatever I saw or smelled or felt, and then when I came to Darpana and walked up that sort of wooden steps. Now it's something else on that top part. It was a mud house building. It was exciting because I saw so many different types of puppets, and I was introduced to many Indian forms of puppets, especially the Andhra shadow puppets, which they were working. And for me, what I think for many people, what clicks your imagination or takes you retro into something is the sense of smell. You know, when you're in an environment, and I'm going up the hills to a hill station, and you smell this wood burning, or at Darpana, there was something sense, and that if I still go there and I sit now, it's changed, but that little mandir on top is there. It used to be a mud crowd and mud thing. There was a certain smell, and that still stays with me. And Meherben's whole concept of creativity, educational puppet is what I imbibed. And she was the one who introduced me to world puppetry through UNIMA, which is the world puppet body, and which still one is a member of. So I think one thing led to another. The most exciting thing was being in Ahmedabad. We were just 30 students in the class at NID. And in the evenings, I think thrice a week or twice a week, I can't remember, I was to have a scooter and drive up to, that area at Darpana. And yeah, then there would be classes there. Then we joined, performed, traveled with them. There was learning by doing, things like that. And it was an environment very different from today, I would say. Creative environment, both at NID as well as at Darpan, because there was dance, there was theater, there were so many other things. Times change, and according to the times also this changes. So one always feels that, oh, it was better then, but maybe it is not for the people today. They want this, so it's present situation.
So you said Meherben had a focus on educational puppetry. Can you tell me more? What do you mean by educational puppetry?
Well, that's a term. You box that in. Meherben was a modern puppeteer, right? What we call not a traditional or generational puppeteer. She was brought into puppetry through Lina Ben, Mangalda Shreya School, and she was sent to Czechoslovakia first time, and UNIMA came in, and that's how. So there are two schools of puppetry in India, of modern puppetry in India. One is from Darpana and Meherben, which is more creative and paper, different material, message oriented. And then there is the very formal, elegant rod puppet style from Kolkata, which Suresh Datta and these people went to Russia and Moscow and studied under Obraztsov for a short period. And they brought back that technique, which was like a very solid technique, rod puppet technique, for 13, 14 people in the theater, Tapasan doing the lights, actors doing voiceover. So it was like literally like a baby Obraztsov's performance, everywhere where people, he said, they took that and they did that. While as I would say Meherben's was more creative. And she spoke about creative drama and puppetry. Her book with the National Book Trust, Creative Drama and Puppetry, is still coming out in so many, publications, so many years. So
by creativity, do you mean the creative craft or creative concepting?
I would say both, because how would you separate that craft? You think of something and then you start making it. I suppose for me, you also are limited by the materials you have with you and the period of time you're working in. It's very important for me because you can have fantastic ideas, and many people have it in my group as well. We'll do this, we'll do that. But then eventually you say, this is what you have in hand and how best you can use that or to communicate. And not as puppetry as for me, from Meshke in Stockholm, not puppetry as an ends in itself, but as a means to use with other art forms. That's very important.
And means to what?
Means to use it to communicate, to story. So I you use actors, you use masks, you use dance, because otherwise the formal puppetry, puppet in a puppet stage, things like that. So I broke away from that after Darpana and going to Stockholm and coming back. That is what I brought back with me.
Right. So since you brought up NID and Darpana at the same time, I have a question on that. You know, during our time at NID, design was not established. There was kind of an ideological fervor at NID. So we would like sit around and talk philosophy of design as much as the craft of design. You know, so there's almost like when I talk to people of that time, even today we feel passionate about just talking about life, society, and the role of creativity in shaping society. Yeah. Compared to that, like how was the environment at Darpana at that time? Was it more about just puppetry as a craft, or was there a kind of a philosophical conversation about what you can do with puppetry?
Well, now when you say Darpana, you're talking of one section of Darpana.
Yeah.
Puppetry.
Yeah, not the whole.
I think there it was more of a craft. I would say now when I look back. Okay, though there was philosophical discussion, Mrinal and Eben were there, people were there, so there would be, but it was more craft, and through the craft, what you can say, the and ideology, and wow, what it was in NID was that. So I feel privileged that I had both these things, you know. So even today, when somebody asks me about my style is now, I would say, conventional. You know, it's not, it was in the 70s, 80s or something very modern, but there are many people doing many more different things. And, but the things that I got at that period of time in Ahmedabad, being away from a sheltered home, in a design school, which is the most fantastic campus, and Ahmedabad as a city, vibrant city of things happening, and then Darpana. And then Darpana, you saw dance, you saw theater, you saw puppetry, and at NID, you had, as you said, that still stays, the discussions, the things, the not just the craft. I can laugh about it now that, you know, you made a little scratch and you made that whole thing and then put it on the board and you discussed and you spoke about it. Nobody would do that anymore. And they would say, why do you need that? It's so silly that, you know, right now when I go back to NID or the other institutes to do workshops, you know, in puppetry, it's strange. And when you discuss certain things about, even about what we say, jugaad, it's, okay, I don't have this material. What else can I do with? What can I work with? You know, it's sometimes it's a block, and you'd go straight to the computer and search for things and, you know, get out things like that. So, but I think that's the present time. You know, the more one sees it, one shouldn't say that it's bad. It's how, but how you use it is more important. Again, the same question, not as an ends in itself.
Correct. So you said something interesting. You said 70s and 80s you were more modern and now you become more traditional. Can you explain?
Conventional.
Conventional. So what is conventional?
I don't know what the techniques I use or my presentation or the type of puppets I use comes from the 60s, 70s, the style of using puppets. There's more, there is more lyrical something in it. There's more aesthetics or beauty in it. I don't know. And today, when I see, because of my position in UNIMA, which was the president, I saw so many new things and a lot of angst in puppetry, in theater, and people. And maybe that's the society. And I feel that, my God, am I doing something that is outdated now? And because everything is very, you know, boom, boom, and thing. And I asked some of my colleagues in World Puppet Body, UNIMA, who are at the Institute of Marionette Theatre in Charleville-Mézières, and I said, why is it so? What is it that today is attractive, that it would be selected where it's very, I wouldn't say violent, but very in the face, very, something. And this lady said, no, but that's the style of that person. Your style is this. Maybe your style, not the word conventional, not the word traditional. I don't know what was the word that was used by this French the director. And it either it was comforting that, okay, you're doing something, because he Kivaris went to Charleville-Mézières, which is the Edinburgh of puppetry in France, and people came out when they saw that show. They spoke about the beauty of the show. They spoke about the emotion of that show. Okay, they did have the synopsis, they did have the subtext, but you're not all reading all those things because it was in Hindi. And they came out saying that it moved them, the music, the colors, the things like that. So I'm happy that way.
So I want to try and give it words, what you said, because I have watched many of your videos, the ones that you sent, plus I watched them on YouTube. And I have a kind of a sense, and I will say it, and then you can tell me if that is right. What I see is, I think you have evolved through global exposure.
Yes.
Maybe at times, you try to cater to a certain prevailing style. You experiment with various styles. So sometimes it becomes extremely contemporary, sometimes very abstract, sometimes sophisticated. So it's like music or design. You look at these different genres, but then eventually you retire or you retreat to your core, which even as you age in life, you tend to center yourself to a tranquil, gentle soul. And then from that, the expression that comes is, you may call it traditional, you might call it, conventional, but I think what it means is like it is more centered with the universe, that is more appealing to a wide range of people, as a state that we all aspire. But in our pursuit of happiness or pursuit of exuberance or pursuit of whatever, we end up being too bold and bright, but we retreat to a place which is more calm, graceful, and elegant. And I see that expression in your work now.
Yeah, sure, because I think maybe for anybody, when you start something and you want to create the whole world and you want to do this and that you break through at that age, impress maybe, and then slowly as you evolve. Yes, I was lucky that I was at NID, at Darpana and ISRO, the Space Application Center, the satellite TV instructional experiment. And then I went out to Stockholm as a guest student, came back, once again went to Stockholm, and then to Berlin, East Germany at that time to direct a performance, and then came to Delhi. If maybe I did not have that base, I might have thought everything was fabulous there, So there are definitely some things that I got. And one of the most impressive things that connected that Western thing with the Asian or Eastern was my workshop with Senosuke Yoshida, who was a Bunraku theater master, who came for the first time. The Bunraku theater came out of Japan to perform in Europe, to Stockholm, because Meshke managed to get them somehow, because they were always very close. And he was working on Antigone, the performance, but in this Bunraku style. And so after the Bunraku theater went back, the young master stayed to do the workshops with us of how we move, how we do things. And that opened up a whole special thing when I came and I started using that. Today, every second person is using puppeteer scene and working the puppet, things like that. But that connection with the Western influences and what came all the way from Japan influenced me a lot. My other thing that every time somebody asks me, in the beginning they used to ask, not so much now, that what is Indian in your shows? Right? There was in the 60s this conscious effort, Festivals of India, to make India, folklore, Gota, Shiny, all that. And after that, it doesn't happen. In the influence of using different types of music, both from Western to whatever different types you would hear earlier, uh, uh, it 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 was what that I grew up with, maybe in classical Western music, or then introduced to Indian classical or other things at NID, that came into the work. So yes, what you're saying is right, but I think what you're saying is true for any person or any conscious person. As you age, you think differently. You look back, and as we come today to the Rumi performance, it's something else. And but in Rumi, there's a collective work. 3 people from NID in that production. Shahz Ahmad from the animation department, animation backdrop, who did it. So the script, it wasn't easy. We were always conflict working. Sandeep Pillai, who is and from NID industrial design, went to Bangalore and now composes music. So he came in, and then our group, and then 2 actors. So after a long time, it was not just my puppeteers working, it was outside people also working. And there were many influences there that helped. But at the core of it, still, there is that movement, or if you notice the hands, the puppet, the objects in that performance, which have come through many shows, or the eyes of the puppet, or the connection of the puppet and the human being. That's what's interesting.
So I have a question on that. When you brought up Rumi during your interview with Siddharth and Nandita, it like flashed a light in my head. So my question is, what appealed to you about Rumi? Was it your idea or somebody else brought you the idea of doing something on Rumi? And if it was your idea, what drew you into the essence of what Rumi is and how to express it?
Okay. See, every time you create a production, as you said, most of our productions are very different. Okay. And if I stick to just one type of though we become that Daddi Pudumjee, Ishara will play with scale, giant puppets, small puppets, has become like that. Everyone has been, we've tried different techniques or different types of visual performance. The Rumi, of course, I cannot read the Rumi in its original language, in Farsi or Persian or Dari or whatever. I can read the English translation or transliteration. And the one that is widely used is Coleman Barks. He's made Rumi famous, though some people criticize also that it is a white man's Orientalism. Of all people, someone who's I'm reading is from my own hometown, Farooq Dhondi. He has written 2 or 3 books on Rumi, on his poems, and it's very interesting what is the difference between that. And he says that, you know, this is the true one, not that. But anyway, reading and going through things, I came across a poem, Who is at My Door? Okay, the English version. It is in the Masnavi, the poem, but it's not like Who is at My Door. It's about the master and the student, and the poem in English is, you know, who is at my door? He says, it is me, I want to come in, you know, into this realm. And the master says, you're not ready, please go see the world, do this, do that, come back. And each time he comes back, there's another test, you know. And that poem I have used in English once or twice in a school in Dubai, in James Modern Academy, when we were doing this movement piece with just the poem. It has come in Welham Girls School when we did their 50th anniversary. It stayed. It's been about 7-8 years. And during the pandemic, when we finished whatever, and I was chatting with Shahz. Shahz is very much into Sufism and Rumi especially, and he's been blessed by one of the masters. And when I spoke about this, he said, of course. And I said, yeah, but then the conflict was that I said, I'm laying out a trajectory, a synopsis. I want to use this poem, but it became also a trap using that poem because, and I said between the poems, the stories that happen when he goes away are other stories from the Matnavi, or they are from Asian folk tales, things like that, because all these come very similar. Hitopadesa, Panchtantra, folk tales, so there are these 3 or 4 stories, very existentialist, very knowing yourself stories. And the 2 actors, the one playing so-called the master, Shams, and the boy, and one is dressed a little bit in more period costume or a jacket, the other one is in the present day costume, and then he sends it out, and that is done. Frankly speaking, there's just one puppet in it, which is the inner voice of the boy, the sort of rattan puppet. And it one thing led to another, and I was using very much stock music to rehearse. And when Sandeep came in, he said, "What nonsense, stock music?" No, but I said, "We've been rehearsing moves, and also we need the same beat, we need those counts." And then he came up with the most beautiful soundtrack. When we met a person from the Rumi Foundation in Delhi, in Gurgaon, Shahs took me, and we were discussing, and this lady also said, "Why are you doing Rumi? What is it? Why do you want to do it?" And I couldn't say why. I mean, because I read the poem, I wanted it. I want to express something through it, use puppets. And what she said was very interesting. She said, which I didn't know, that he's the 2nd most read poet in the world because of the English translation. First Shakespeare, then comes Rumi, because of Coleman Barks, he's made. And then what she struck, and what we was talking with Shahs also, that it has, the message is universal. Okay, it's not bulk or Turkey or India. And so that has to be definitely in the thing. We are not going to work with only sounds from one area or make it. And that is what the first thing happened with Sandeep, the discussion. And one of the most beautiful pieces of movement in that piece are these chants. And the chants come from Azan, it comes from Buddhist chant, it comes Lord's Prayer, Shanti, and he's mixed these together. And that is actually the first or second piece that opens the whole show. And yeah, it's a nice show. I don't know.
So did making of Rumi affect you in any way? Did you evolve in any way?
Sure, one does, I suppose so. I can't put it in words, but there's a lot one read, and there's a lot of unconventional Ruby that people don't know. Everyone's thinking of this very beautiful thing, but there's a lot of violence in some parts, sexual stuff in original Rumi things. When you read many translations, people have done. So the more one read that, the more it was interesting, and the more we perform. We did it in English. And what was the best thing that happened? Spikmaki, the organization during the Amrit Motsav thing, said, "We want the Rumi." I said, "That 12 people taking it." "No, we're taking it, we're taking it." And it went the first production, even before it was not made. And the synopsis, NCPA in Bombay, in the Sufi festival, said, "Yes, we are taking it." I said, "I don't have anything to show you right now. It's only this. Yes, we're taking it." But then immediately before that, Geeta Chandran, the dancer, she was curating the main stage at Serendipity Festival in Goa. And it was taken in December last year on this huge stage. Big. Then before going to Bombay, Malika Sarabhai, Darpana. There's a nice shows. Then went to Bombay in CPA. Then in Delhi at our Ishara Festival. And then the most beautiful thing that happened was we performed 2 months ago in Srinagar in Kashmir and at the University of Kashmir. And we said, we are going to redo the script into Hindustani, a mixture of Hindi, Urdu. And that script is the better script, much nicer than the English script. And then 15,000 students saw it in the Spikmeki convention in Nagpur recently.
Wow.
So, yeah. So when you do it and you get the reaction, because not every show is very different. The vibes, the audience and the actors and the music and problems with technique, technology, lights, projection, all this comes in. But at the end of the day, when someone fresh sees it, they do get moved. They do ask, what is this? Or why is this? And then when you ask them, what did you understand? They say what we wanted to.
So this, you said something very interesting. You used the word universal. That somebody told you this is a or the Rumi Foundation person told you that this is a universal, right? So what I find is between Gandhi, Buddha, and Rumi, there are some common elements that are universal.
Absolutely.
And there, when people read them, they don't look at them as the culture they came from or the traditions they came from, but they see them as a philosophy or a way of being that is universal.
Right.
And that's one reason why they inspire unique action. Like Gandhi inspired Martin Luther King Jr. and it inspired Nelson Mandela and still continues to inspire. The same way Buddha has gone all over the world. They all came from India, but they scanned the whole world. So my understanding of where your experiments with Rumi and Gandhi are that actually it is so much invaluable to spread these universal messages in a community that is so torn right now these days between opinions and ideas and ideologies. And as you said, like even on like social media, like friends are arguing and fighting, not in a productive way, not in a peaceful outcome way, but in a way that tears us apart. And I think your kind of creativity is engaging people, taking them to a different kind of a mental state.
Yes, what you said, the universality of this. While we were working with Rumi, another little thing came about, the Mahindra, the Kabir festival in Varanasi. And teamwork asked, Minal asked us, can you do something, a small piece with large puppets? I said, we cannot, there's no time to make something, but we'll put together something with our puppets. And Sandeep Pillai and all of them are Kabir, they've got text and they put it to music. And we went all the way there. Now, reading Kabir was exactly the same. As you say, the what he says, what Rumi says, or what any of the other philosophers say, there's it's so similar. It's only that we box them that he's come from here, he's come from there. In fact, Gandhi is going day after tomorrow to be performed in Varanasi in a school, the images of truth. Yeah. So when I said, why don't you take when land becomes water, because water, Varanasi, this is, no, we want the Gandhi show. And it's been going on since 93. It went to Iran of all places. They insisted, they didn't want Heer Ke Waris because it connects with Laila Majnu and all. No, we want this one. So
I think the world is craving for a space of peace.
I hope so.
I think so. I feel it. And in fact, I'm going to be doing an interview with Shabnam also, Shabnam Virmani, because she's doing an amazing job to this Kabir Yatra also.
Sure.
And I think one reason why all of these things are coming together in my project is I'm looking for people who are bringing about a positive change with elegance. We are evoking the goodness in people. We don't have to just deal with people at an intellectual level because, it's like we need to get close to them. So I want to move and ask you one question. Have you influenced your work more or have puppets also influenced you?
Both ways. I mean, puppets have influence because what how do I say? See, there's one thing is the craft, as you said, or the art of puppetry. There's this you can do, or this works very well. Puppets die beautifully, but the very act of giving a object which is without life, movement and life, and our techniques are very simple. For me, it is more that the puppeteer or the actor or person emotes through the puppet, because you have very good technical puppets today, animatronics, this, that, and the other. But for me, the puppets are very simple, and it's the movement and the slight small things in it which evoke an emotion. And for me, that is my work. And It's very important because but again, I feel that has been maybe become dated, but at the same time, it's creating something beautiful. So whenever somebody sees it, they like it, you know. None of them say they're bored. They're like, they
So
love it.
did you ever consider creating like a more permanent iterative character like Sesame Street, which will stay in children's or people's imagination for a long time as like almost like a pervasive character that shapes their thought process?
No, I haven't had something like that. Uh, it has been the overall. If you notice, spoke about the hands.
Yeah.
And these hands keep coming into many of our shows. Some people, groups say, oh, it's because it's easy, we are doing, but in different sizes, in different ways, it's been used. And for me, who was it? I think it was Pupul Jaikar when she said the creative, not the hand. What was it? She used that term. Much later, it came back again to me. But for me, those are the most expressive things in a show or in a performance or a person, and the eyes. Many of my performance puppets don't have pupils; they just have black eyes, and these have become the stamp in Ishara or my work. It's
And
color.
what is your interpretation of why eyes and hands are almost like a recurring theme of your creativity?
These are the most, when you look at a person, when you see a person moving, dance, everything comes in movement. And that movement piece came into also my work because of our collaborations with the late Asta Debu in the late 80s, two performances, many Thanatomorphia, many faces of death, and one piece called Friends. From there it started this whole movement trajectory, but always human beings and puppet. It's not just, let me tell you that the next performance we are working on, because after Rumi, it was exhausting. After Gandhi also, it was exhausting. You said, my God, you've done everything. You don't want to do anything more, And very interesting, Gandhi was commissioned by Dr. Kapilavatsan, IGNCA, long ago. But it happened after my first or second visit to Brazil, of all places. It was very interesting. There's a piece of music in that, which the drumming comes from Brazil, but there was a sense of some openness, something that happened, laughter, and that came into that show, and that carries on and on and on. Sometimes, today we were rehearsing this morning, and we were packing, and we're saying, my God, we haven't even counted how many times this show has been done. Next performance is, we got so tired, we said it has to be a small 2-3 people performance we can take, but like soft toys. And that I think I spoke about in that is adapting the ugly duckling. Okay, Hans Christian. But through that, we are going to talk about many things about our present situation in India. And through that, I'm going to use a lot of textiles of India, because these big animals, the duck, the duckling, and the other animal are all going to be made from regional textiles, like soft toys, like pillows. And each of them think they're fantastic. And each of them say that you don't have what I have. A lot of things will come into that community, social, caste, color, all these sort of things. And we don't know how we're going to end it, because it cannot be a white swan, because that would be a problem, fairness. But this is what we are working on. And the text synopsis will be written very simple. It will be for children in schools. And maybe before they come in, we are going to hang these textiles, which we have used from every part of India, and have a little text where they come from. So
That's
there's a
nice.
connection.
So I have a question, again, referring back to the interview with Siddharth. You did mention this story, and you said you're still working on an idea as to what does the ugly duckling transform into, and you don't want to call it white, because that is like that the ad controversy. What is that? Fair and something. What was
Fair
that?
and lovely cream.
Fair and lovely, and you don't want that message to be put out. So have you arrived at what is that transformation coming to?
We don't know. We thought that maybe it'll be a mix of all this, which is too cliched. It is too obvious. But I think while we work on it, we will get to that point. We don't know. We are still, once we get the things in our hands and we start improvising, that's when the ideas start flowing, really speaking.
So I have an idea. May I give you an idea?
Sure.
And this comes from my evolution of my core and so watching your core at play also. I think it's not the transformation of color and appearance. It's more about transformation of the soul. So if it could be a soul that was hidden in darkness is now illuminated and it's revealed to its full glory, and you can give those the glory of the soul attributes that you want to give. But I think you can move that focus from superficiality of the ugly duckling story to the essential core of a spiritual inquiry.
Yes, sure. How do I put it into practical, into the transformation of it?
Well, you can actually show it, like I don't know, now I'm using my designerly mind. So like I can almost see it as like this was a dark ball, always hidden away from people's sight. People didn't care for it. But suddenly there was a light that illuminated in it, and it began to grow and became a light that was not contained just within that form, but it illuminated the space around it.
Right.
So this is what I see as a metaphorically. I'm not saying that form-wise, that is what it says. But I want to tell you something very interesting. I know you wanted to say something, but I want to just complete my thought if you don't mind. So I wrote 3 books during COVID, and I have never written poetry in my life. So I showed my manuscript, my first book's manuscript to Mohan Bhandari. And I asked him, Bhandari, what happened? I don't even know how I just started writing poetry. I just started writing one night at 3 o'clock at night. And I had an encounter with a feather. And that night, that feather became me in my consciousness. And I used the feather as a metaphor and wrote a poem called An Unstuck Feather. And then my just poetry started flowing. So Bhandari gave me Iqbal's poem. But essentially what he explained is, there is a bird languishing in a forest in darkness, unnoticed, uncared for. But just at a moment when it's ready to turn into a flower, a maven, somebody who has the capacity to appreciate beauty, happens to walk by, and his eyes fall on a blooming flower. And in that moment, something beautiful happens.
Right.
And that's what happened. There was a bud forming inside you through your years of sensitivity, curiosity, compassion, empathy, whatever that might be. And when all of that was ready to come and transform into a flower, you had an encounter with that feather. And the same thing that Iqbal says in his poem happened in your life. And that moment took on a form of a poem.
You see, it's an interesting thing. I've just come back from Pune yesterday. My elder brother's daughter, niece, she's a calligrapher. Okay, and she's been doing normal calligraphy. She studied in Bombay and then a short stint in Japan as well. But then she went into the Avesta language. It's a dead language. Okay, nobody can read it, only few people. She studied it and she made graphs, and I introduced her to Mahendra Bhai, and Mahendra Bhai said, my God, this girl has gone, so deep into it. And then the book has just come out, 1,000 names of Aura Mazda she's done in calligraphy through the pandemic. And I asked parent, she's never studied design. And if you see that, I said, but the composition, the putting of letters, and how she says it's a calling I got. I had to do it. And she carried on and on and on. And at some point I said, but who's going to read? Once she's done it, I said the meanings are very beautiful when you translate the word and the meaning in English. But each picture is a beautiful letter. And I kept asking her. She said, it's a calling I had. I have to do this. And it's something like that from very simple. And I said, but parent, what is it in your mind? She said, I have to do it. That's it. It came to me, and I started working and working and working. And through the 2 years, my God, she went through, it was like meditation, she said, for me.
Absolutely. Honestly, what I have learned in life is harmony, balance, and peace are at the core of human capacity that nature has built in us.
Right.
Where our intellectual curiosity takes us is in search of things that don't matter. But when we come back eventually after traveling the world, we discover that harmony, balance, compassion, those are the core qualities that give us the kind of grounding that we need in having a meaningful connection with the universe. And I think that's what is happening to her also.
Maybe, and but what you said is very difficult, because again, going back to Rumi, when we were creating, there were a lot of conflicts when I saw certain things that were created, the designs for the backdrops. I said, no, this is not something that I thought about. But then they said, you're the director. What do you mean not thought about? Why should you? There were big discussions. And I said, I don't know. I just feel that this is not happening. And there was a lot of conflict in, peace. Now, the people I work with all the time, okay, they understand I need something, they need something, we know. But when I'm working with another, there is definitely another way of thinking, and it could be very good. So we came to a level eventually. There were a lot of problems, in fact, and it was very difficult. And that I see that again, is it conventional that I like that sort of thing or not, or that we have come through that school which gave us that, or is it something that through feeling or experience, and as you said, I've come to a certain age, I'm 72, that you then like something like this, or this is going to work? I don't know.
You forgot one more thing. You're a Parsi. So but culturally, you have appreciation for humor and taking life lightly.
Thank God.
No, I'm not kidding. I think I have experienced that with so many people, like everybody that I've met who's a Parsi. See, these are some of the common qualities I wish everybody had.
It's crazy. Sometimes it gets you into a problem.
But that's fine. Nobody gets into trouble for being good.
But that's true. Maybe the whole tenets of Homata Hokta Hovrashta. I'm not religious. I'm very interested in my religion. I don't pray like every day that way. But the main three tenets are Homata Hokta Hovrashta, meaning good words, good deeds, good thoughts. These are the three main tenets of Zoroastrianism.
Absolutely. So just to give you an example, I've grown up in a political family. I've seen a lot of argumentation, conflicts, anger, revolution, all of that stuff. But there's one person who has really, I found to be, I was curious about and I was fascinated by, was Pilu Modi.
Pilu Modi.
He was in politics. He was very active, but he had such an amazing sense of humor. And had such an endearing personality that he connected with everybody, even with people who he was fiercely opposed to. And I think that is the natural quality that has always, I found it as like something that we need to preserve and grow in the whole society.
Yeah, maybe.
I have one question. Imagine you are on the last day of your life, and I hope it's another 20, 30, 40 years, and you look back. What would you like to see in the world that your puppetry has caused in people?
When I do a performance, or when we as a collective do a performance, and it connects with the audience, whether they hate it or they like it, and they come back and meet you and they see something. I think for me as an artist, that is important. I'll give you an example. Most of the performances that went out into the world through ICCR and all in the early 60s, 70s were classical, traditional. UNIMA, the World Congress, World Puppet Body, has every 4 years a large congress and a big festival. So every 4 years, okay? So the one in 1983-84 was in Dresden in East Germany. Huge, huge. Everywhere people come. And we took a performance of Dhola Maru, okay, the Rajasthani Gatha, but in the way we did it with mass, with traditional puppets. It had never, something like that would never go out easily because it was modern, not Indian, but still an Indian story. When that happened on stage, the audience all got up and applauded, and we were shocked. They said that we've never seen something, we never expected something like this coming out of India. Again, snake charmer, elephant, all that. And the best thing that happened there were both my teachers were in the audience and they came up on stage with flowers, Michael Meshke and Merbin. It was very moving. Yeah, it was a fantastic, I'll never forget that. Michael Meshke is still going strong. He's very old now, between Sweden and France. But the other day in Pune, someone said, what's going to happen? At one time, I feel that enough is enough. I don't want to keep going and being responsible. I want to get up, have a coffee, read a paper, not do anything. They said, you'll never be able to sit still. But what's going to happen to all this? I said, I don't know. Other people who will take it forward. Yes, the young people who I worked with, many of them are doing things and they're doing wonderful work, from Salam Balak Trust, all this. I don't want to be immortal.
So, I'm going to ask you another very interesting question, and this takes it back to your first day in Meherbin's class at Darpana. If you could tell me one aroma or smell that you associate with the environment that has been created around puppetry in the real world, and this is a very conceptual question, an abstract question, but what smell would you associate with the environment that your work creates?
You see, that it's totally different. You laugh because it was cow dung plaster. That building was lipowed with that mud plaster and cow dung plaster, and that was a very strong, acrid smell. That stays. And that was my first thing, climbing up those steps and going into that cavernous round room on top. It's got nothing to do with puppetry, maybe, but it connects because of that space. And today, the canteen or the restaurant is down there, and I look up and see it. It's still there. So it's that. I don't know. My first coming into Ahmedabad, and nobody knew, and there was a Feroz Kekubad. I was staying with him that day, and then he was taking me in a little car to drop me to NID Paldi, which was way out according that time for the interview and all. In Hasol, that place doesn't exist as it was. There was another acrid smell of some spices, or when you went down towards Delhi Darwaja, you heard. These are all the things that stay. Whether they're connected with your art or with your life, I don't know, but it stays something. So sound, music is important. When you spoke about the ending of Ugly Duckling, that's piece, that what you said is most probably will happen with the music or what we will end it with. The enlightenment. I think that'll be when music is very important for me, sound, music, because that is the text in now my shows. Some performances don't have any spoken text, it's the music.
I have one last question before we end this session. So, and this is not a political question, this is a very personal question. But I'm going to connect it to the reason for my doing this project. So, as I told you earlier, that I'm doing this project and I call it the legacy of India's imagination. More so because it's my gratitude to my parents, especially since it's my father's birth centenary year. The era in which they dreamt of the future of India. And they were both very influenced by Gandhian ideals of, homegrown, simple lifestyle, harmony, non-violence, and so on, social justice. So and there were people in every field in that era, and through all this era, be it artists or be it industrialists or whoever, they were driven by that kind of a zeitgeist. If you were to tap into your feelings, your creativity, what kind of a society, what qualities do you want to see in the society? So that's my question.
It's easy and yet very difficult. It's not easy to be absolutely Gandhian for me. But my only connection to Gandhian is through my mother, Edenwala, and her grandfather, who was a friend of Mahatma Gandhi's. Many people today are critical, but I think that is what, when you read something or that or Martin Luther or all of these philosophers, is what you need today. You cannot imagine this things I hear at times with my young puppeteers the other day at the airport, traveling. They're from another community, as you know, as you understand. And there was this vicious gentleman sitting in front of us and attacking that community, talking with them. Little did he know that they were from that. And I, with my hard of hearing, was asking, what is he saying? What is he saying? And the other ones said, just keep quiet. I felt very bad. I felt very sad that a young person is listening to this in present day. And this is not what I expect. I'm criticized that, oh, every community has its bad. Yes, they do, even in my community, fanatics. But we need something, some introspection, something that is missing today. I do not know, is that coming from wherever, or what is speaking to that, or what is the critical? You sometimes use that piece to suit yourself, or people against it. Again, as you said, not political, but it is. You know, all art sometimes eventually does become political in a sugar-coated way, or whatever you're trying to say, because you're trying to say something that you believe in. And that comes through every show that we do. You know, it's not spoon feeding, not trashing, but there is that message that will come there. And as you said on the last day, I hope, I don't believe that it might happen, but I still have hope. You know, the figure of hope strumming on a one-string harp. You know, there's an art piece. I hope. I do not know. And yeah, I can't say anymore. But it shook me about what I was hearing of this person speaking. And maybe that person is also right. How do you criticize? That person is what the person believes in. As you say, you believe in your core, that person believes that. But it was never that way, or it was not like that when I grew up.
Absolutely. And well, if we can at least leave the world the way, in the kind of environment that we grew up, we will leave behind a much better world for our children.
Yes, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Dadi. I hope you enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, yes, very much so. Thank you.
And we will stay in touch.
Definitely.
Bye and good night.
Thank you for all the work you're doing on these projects that you're making.